Hey guys, I hope you had a good weekend. So for this video, of course, the topic is to relate back what happened at work to the stuff that we read about in chapter 1 of the book. So when I am reading through the book, it actually, especially chapter 1, it makes me think about a particular case that I actually just had last week with an athlete. I had an athlete suffer just a minor hamstring strain, but of course it was early in the week, and he really couldn't walk without a limp, so he definitely wasn't going to be able to participate in practice. But when I look back at chapter 1, it really makes me think about what was probably going through his head, and he kind of expressed it to me a little bit, but he definitely had some different, like, the personal and situational factors going on. I would say his personal factor was that he hadn't been playing football there until this year. Like, he'd taken a few years off. I think it'd been about 3 years since he'd played football at all. So he was really just trying to still kind of place himself on the varsity squad and kind of determine his place there. So that was a big factor for him. And of course, the situational factor was that there was a good chance that he was not going to be able to play that following Friday in the football game. And that's a big thing, when you're talking about high school football. They definitely all want to be part of the Friday night experience and just kind of have that. So this athlete was very determined to play on Friday. He did a lot extra stuff that beyond the rehab program that I was taking him through. And of course, the big issue with that is that when you try and get back faster and you're doing a lot more than what your body can really handle, and you can definitely make that injury a lot worse. And then, of course, that's going to delay the healing process and the ability to send the athlete back to play. Of course, I had to have discussions with him and tell him all that and try and get that through his head so that he wouldn't risk hurting himself even further for that one. But he definitely had a lot of factors playing into why he was pushing himself further in the rehab program that I was taking him through and everything. He had a lot of the teammates and even some of the coaches that were kind of pushing him and to go, harder a little bit, just trying to get him back to play faster. And just they also were kind of telling him, you're not hurt, there's nothing wrong. And so that kind of got to him, and he was really feeling the pressure that he should be back to play and that he really shouldn't be feeling hurt and all that stuff. But he did pretty well of ignoring them and just kind of concentrating on what he's supposed to be doing to make himself better. But it is stressful on him, and it's a little bit stressful on me too when you start hearing that stuff that, they're kind of pressuring him to not think that he's hurt and just, saying, hey, you're not really hurt, get back to practice so that way we can have you for Friday and stuff like that. But what I really took from this chapter is that it's definitely important to have that support system for the athletes, just so that way they have someone that they can go to if they're having a little bit more of a rough time, or even the good days, just to go and, talk to someone about it. It's always good to see that. But I also, which I don't really think about it too much, but throughout the chapter 1 of the book, I realized that the injury history of the patient is actually very important, especially when an athlete that might have had an injury, the same injury that they're experiencing now, before, and with that, they might be comparing like the time that it's taking to recover for this time to last time. And if they're recovering faster, it's great, and that's definitely positive for them to see. But if it is taking them longer to recover this time than last time, they're probably going to have some negative thoughts going through, and they're not going to understand why there's a difference and, what's going on and what's keeping them from recovering as fast as they did last time. And that does get frustrating for them and for us sometimes as athletic trainers to deal with that. But the thing I always do is I always remind them that, everyone is different, but also every time you have an injury, it is a little bit different. And it just depends on the mechanism and how severe last time was and this time is, and all that fun stuff to discuss with a high schooler that probably doesn't understand a single thing you're saying. But Anyways, and then something that I always do, and I really felt like it really helped in this situation, was I tried to keep the athlete doing all the rehab protocol stuff and everything I had him going through on the sidelines. And I find that that really helps with the athlete being able to still feel like a part of the team and still remain or still have his identity intact and everything as an athlete, so that they don't really lose that, just so you don't have a risk, or you don't have a higher risk of them becoming depressed or just feeling like they're not associated with the team or anything. But with an injury like this, it's not as big of a deal, just because it's typically not as lengthy as a rehab, process as like an ACL reconstruction surgery or something more like that, where there's a longer rehab time associated with it. But I definitely have taken from this first chapter and kind of relating it to work is that as an athletic trainer, it is really important for us to be a part of that support system, because in reality, we don't know what the situation is at home or what they go through when they're in school, what they're hearing from other people around them. And it is really important for us to be there and just kind of talk them through, because we usually have a better understanding than some of the other people that are around all day of what is actually going on with the injury and the recovery process. So it is good for us to kind of be there and just talk them through all this stuff, whether they have positive thoughts or negative thoughts about it. But that's about all for this topic and how it relates into the last couple weeks of work for me.